359 is sponsored by USB Technology. The USB Implementers Forum reminds consumers that USB IF logos are displayed on certified USB products. So the next time you're shopping for a reliable USB charger, cable, or device, look for the logos. Get the whole story at enablingusb.org. Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 359 podcast on Wednesday, August 22nd. We're at episode 447, and before we get started, we want to wish a very happy birthday to the incomparable Ray Bradbury, the legendary sci-fi author famous for The Martian Chronicles, Fahrenheit 451, and one of my personal favorites, The Halloween Tree, passed away in 2012, would have been 98 today.
Oh, wow.
Alfred, Roger, were you guys Ray Bradbury fans?
I mean, Fahrenheit 451 is definitely a favorite.
That was one of the best school-assigned readings I've ever...
It was. Well, that and 1984 were like my two
1980.
favorites.
Oh, yeah.
It's Orwell. I mean, it's not a Bradbury story, but Martian Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, huge fan. I was very devastated when he passed away. So
Huge loss for the community, but
definitely.
Hey, that's not what we're talking about today.
Well, we are talking about that kind of feature tech that Ray Bradbury envisioned.
He would be pretty stoked about our third story.
Yes, he would. So we've got a lot of 5G stuff today. We're going to talk about T-Mobile. I had a chance to talk with T-Mobile's John Ledger and Mike Sievert about their vision for 5G. We'll break that down. We'll also talk about Qualcomm showing off their latest 5G platform, which I know we're all tired of talking about 5G coming, but this is definitely the latest indication that it's actually coming for real.
Okay, but when's 6G coming?
The year after.
Okay, cool.
And then lastly, as Brian sort of hinted at, we'll be talking about the project to send hundreds of little spacecrafts to Alpha Centauri. Definitely a story that Ray Bradbury would be stoked about, since this is real.
They did not, give me a seat on one of those, unfortunately.
Well, they're pretty small, so it would have been an uncomfortable
I thought it would
ride.
have fit.
It would have been uncomfortable. Right. You are a small guy, but maybe not that small. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. Brian will pick out the best, and we'll get to them in 3 minutes and 59 seconds.
See you back in the chat then in 3, 2...
Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Alfred Ng.
T-Mobile is pushing hard to get its merger with Sprint completed. I had a chance to sit down with CEO John Ledger and President Mike Sievert to discuss how Sprint fits into their plans for 5G. Bottom line is that they're arguing that the combination of T-Mobile and Sprint will allow them to offer a network that is both cheaper and faster, which, when you break it down, like, that doesn't seem likely, since that's not usually how technology works. But
of course it is. Everything is always better and cheaper at the same time. Everyone knows that. That's why I'm now paying $2,000 for a standard phone.
I don't know what phone you're paying for.
It's a dark future that we live in. But I mean, obviously these telecom companies are very optimistic. They're all racing to be first. I'm very curious though, like, in this scenario, does first really matter? Like, if I'm on T-Mobile and Verizon gets 5G first, I'm not gonna say like, oh, I'm leaving this to go to Verizon, because I think that like they'll probably get it like all within a few months of each other.
No, and you bring up an excellent point. I think the idea of being first to 5G is at this point really just about bragging rights. Mm-hmm. It's not really going to affect most consumers. People aren't going to jump ship just to get access to 5G. And you have to sort of parse how these companies are getting to 5G first. Verizon says it'll be first to 5G, but it's going to be a broadband service in 4 cities, so chances are you're not going to have access to it. at&t wants to get mobile 5G out first later this year, but it's really just pucks and not phones. T-Mobile and Sprint both say they're going to launch next year. T-Mobile is committed to a nationwide launch by 2020, which no other carrier has. So there's maybe a likelihood that you'll be able to get 5G in the next 2 years, maybe with T-Mobile and Sprint.
Now, can we talk about what you can actually do with 5G?
Yep.
I mean, I feel like we've been talking about 5G probably since like episode 1 of the 359. But
you're right.
But yeah, I mean, what's all the hubbub?
So 5G, obviously, big speed boost is the big thing. You're looking at speeds at 100 megabits per second, basically faster speeds than what you would get at home, right? And so way faster speeds, and that's great for streaming video and whatever, but they're looking at applications like streaming VR, like powering self-driving cars, being able to do remote surgery. These sorts of applications require not just a speedy network, but a responsive one, and that's sort of the key benefit of 5G.
So what's the holdup? I mean, everyone's like racing to be the first, but like I said, we've been talking about this for a while.
It's a great segue into our next story with Qualcomm announcing its mobile platform. Part of the issue is the lack of hardware, right? We don't have the right equipment to tap into those 5G networks, the ones that are getting built now. And so Qualcomm yesterday just pulled back the curtain on its 5G platform. So it's basically telegraphing that those next flagship phones with like the top of the line processors will have the ability to do 5G. They talked about 5G hotspot capabilities by the end of this year. Phones coming next year.
The $2,000 phones?
Probably won't be 2,000, but
cheaper and faster.
The service, not the phones themselves. The phones will be even crazier expensive. Lastly, our own Stephen Shanklin just published the latest installment of our road trip story. This one, a look at Breakthrough Starshot. It's a project designed to send spacecraft out to neighboring Alpha Centauri. And the interesting thing is, these aren't huge spaceships. They're not spacecraft that you could actually get in. They're tiny little, essentially like baseballs that they're firing out using lasers to power them across really crazy light years away. They're saying it takes about 30 to 40 years to get to Alpha Centauri using this technique. But they're hoping to answer the question, are we alone?
I certainly hope that we are not. And if anyone is out there listening 30 to 40 years from now, please take me with you.
There we go. For more on those stories, check us out on CNET. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Alfred Ng.
Thanks for listening. Tomorrow's show, 6G.
Yeah.
All 6G all the time.
Every show is just a new G. The 359G.
That's what I'm saying. I'm getting tired of hearing about it. Just make it happen so it can be rendered obsolete.
You joke about it, but I think one cable company at some point actually threw out the term 6G a few months ago. I mean, he was immediately ridiculed, but yeah, we're at that point where the hype is so
It's gonna be
rabid that we're just throwing G's everywhere.
It's gonna be like the end of Her, where like the networks are just like we've ascended like G's, and now we're sentient life forms.
Still never watched
Dude,
that movie.
spoilers!
I've still never watched that movie.
It's 2018, dude.
I've had other things to do.
Let's go ahead and jump into the chat and take some questions. First and foremost, Mike Shaw has to know the burning question: did Roger get a pair of pink sneakers?
No,
What?
I asked about the sneakers, and John Ledger mentioned the name of it, and I couldn't pronounce it, so I know I can't afford them. So
What was it, like Balenciagas or something?
No, I'll have to look it up. I think it starts with a Z.
Is John Ledger a good date? I'm just curious. Does he hold the door for you? Is
I
he
feel
sweet
like
and
John,
attentive?
John is great to hang out with for 30-minute spurts, but after a while you're like, I gotta get out here.
Like your parents.
There you go. Wow, that's
John Ledger, the dad of 5G. Okay, so here's the next one from Josh Boyda. Do they have a timeline on when the merger is going to be concluded?
Yes, so they are looking to close the merger by early next year, but of course it is dependent upon regulatory approval. And that's still not guaranteed. There's a lot of folks who are giving this sort of a 50-50 shot, especially noticing how the Justice Department has sort of clung to its fight to block the at&t Time Warner merger. That deal did go through, but the government's still kind of kicking up dust about it. So a lot of folks are wondering if they'll sort of offer the same kind of hurdles or obstacles to T-Mobile and Sprint. So it's not a guarantee at all.
Got it. Hang on, I lost track of where I was going here. I want to talk a little bit more about the Alpha Centauri thing, because as always, the last story always gets cut short, and it's always the cool one in my eyes. So Shanklin went. I see we had footage here that had Stephen Hawking in it. Has this been a long-running project that he's been working on for a couple of years? Shanklin, that is. No, I mean,
for Shanklin, yeah, he's been working on this for about two and a half months. So I mean, the illustration. I think the Hawking footage is sort of an illustration of some of the folks, the minds that are being tapped to
got it
to kind of look at how we travel great distances. And so, yeah, I mean, the story to me is interesting because it's a little counterintuitive. You're thinking, you always envision like a big spacecraft, explorers, you think like Lost in Space or whatever.
But these are more like space segways.
They're not
they're
even
even
segways.
smaller.
They're smaller. They're like space basketballs or something.
It's like when Vegeta and Nappa are in their like little pods coming.
No, they're even smaller than that because these can't
They
even
can't
carry
even fit
you
people,
can't
right?
fit
Yeah.
people in them.
Could you put a Kryptonian child inside one of them?
Yes, you probably could.
Got it.
So there you go.
I don't know. This stuff like this is cool.
Is it just Barry Bonds like just knocking them all out of the park?
Yeah, that's how it's powered. Actually, he just
Line them up.
See, I'm sure Stephen Beacham's geeking out just as hard as I am on this stuff.
No, it's cool. The fact that there's laser beams that freaking power this thing, right? It basically it shoots these things off and accelerates to what, a fifth of the speed of light.
You know, so I guess the game here is to shoot as many as possible. So I guess what are they going with, like the spider egg strategy here?
What is the spider egg strategy?
Have as many eggs as they
Yeah,
can, and they send
that
them
strategy.
off.
Yeah, okay. I probably should have figured that out from from what we're talking about. But
is
yeah,
that
the
really
idea
a
is we
saying?
shoot hundreds of these because chances are most of them aren't going to make it all the way there. But and once they're there, though, it's interesting. They've got their own observation equipment, right? It doesn't stop. It just sort of whizzes by Alpha Centauri and captures all the data. It has its own laser which fires it back to Earth.
It's like a Google Maps for space.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
All right, next question coming in from Mike Shaw again. Won't 5G mobile kill DSL and cable internet services? Now, we've asked this
Maybe.
question before.
That's a great question. I would say if you talk to the internet service providers, they would say maybe down the line, but not right away. This is going to be fairly limited deployment, right? You're looking at 4 cities with Verizon, and I talked to them, and it seems like for a lot of places, just having the standard hookup, that process is like not that onerous. So I can't imagine it's going to replace broadband for a lot of people, especially like places like rural areas where it is still kind of expensive to put equipment up. But who knows, down the line, I would love to have like a fully wireless broadband service.
They don't sound that threatened by it though, where like if there were a giant meteor coming toward like the Earth and like scientists were just saying, oh, maybe that'll kill us down the line, but like not immediately. I would have a lot more concern about it if I were like one of these cable companies, knowing that like, you know, something like 5G has the potential to put me out of business.
Yeah, I mean,
It's interesting that they're not working on a 5G like answer of their own.
part of the issues. I mean, they do have their own wireless service, but they're not, they're not wireless companies.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're in the position they're in now, and I'm sure there's maybe an element of denial to it because it does threaten their core business, and they don't want to admit vulnerabilities. But the fact of the matter is, 5G. It's going to take a while for 5G to get out there as broadly as it would take to pose a risk to these companies. So right now they're at least pretending they're not worried, or if they're not actually worried, they're at least pretending they're not. Did that work?
Pretending not to be worried is a great strategy.
Yeah. Okay. If they're truly not worried.
That kind of made sense in a roundabout way.
Yeah. Sorry.
Next question, going back to the 5G discussion, Ryan Williams asks, any idea when 5G is going to be available in Canada, and would it really be worth the wait over the LTE?
Great question. I'm not sure about Canada. A lot of noise is being made in the U.S. As well as Japan and Korea, but I don't hear Canada in the discussion all that often. So you might have to wait a little bit longer, or come on down to the U.S. in a year or two, and
Things are great here.
We got some good 5G.
It's totally worth it to come here for our
for 5G.
yeah.
But nothing else. In terms of whether it's worth the wait.
I don't think you're really waiting though. It's not like
Yeah.
you're not having internet service.
Yeah, exactly.
Until...
Your LTE. The thing of it is you keep in mind that the LTE networks are getting better step by step. They're not perfect yet, and I imagine some of the issues that you experience with LTE now, you might experience with 5G in terms of coverage gaps. Right? There's still going to be areas where there won't be 5G, and so you kind of are relying on the network that you have now. So for a while, I think the transition is going to be really rough. I think it's not the situation where 2019 hits, they turn on a switch and like 5G's everywhere. It's
the
going
ball
to be pretty
drops,
spotty.
and then
Yeah, the
instead of people like kissing their others, like
pull out their phone and like
phones,
5G.
Whoa! Look how fast I uploaded this picture.
So that will not happen.
From John, for the general public that just goes to YouTube and social media and a little bit of browsing, maybe some music, do you really need 5G? We showed off how it helps with the Internet of Things and smart cars on the road, and the madman who let you do like open heart surgery, Roger, whoever the hell that was.
Woohoo.
But is 5G really that appeasing to the masses when we're already pretty solid with our up and down speeds? For the most part, pockets and exceptions, of course, exist.
Yeah, I would. That's a great question. I would say if you're sort of a casual user and your experience is pretty good now, yeah, it may not be a huge benefit at least right away. But keep in mind that when LTE launched, the first thing we got was like better speeds, and that was great. But then we got stuff like Uber and Lyft and Instagram, and we got all these different apps that popped up that worked so much better because we had a faster network. And so you really have to look at the long-term benefits. It's really, these speeds are insane, so they're going to be able to enable apps that we haven't even figured out yet, right? So that's what I'm most excited about.
I would agree with that. Like if we're considering like around the parameters of what we're using currently, then yeah, LTE is like pretty good enough. But like I think, with 5G that expands your parameters.
Right.
And in the sense of like, I like immediately always go to thinking about like mobile gaming in the sense of like you would be able to play like online games like without that much latency. And there's also been talks, I know Ian Cher wrote about this with like cloud-based gaming in the same sense, like you don't need to have the games on your phone anymore or anything like that, or even the computer that you're using. Like if you can just like connect it to a processor not processor, but
like a server somewhere.
Like a server somewhere that like can host like these like incredibly powerful games, then like with 5G that would be much easier.
One sort of basic example that I would use, Google Photos is a good one, right? Like when you pull up your Google Photos app, your photos take a little while to load, like especially as you're scrolling back through time, because it still has to ping the server. With 5G, it's like instantaneous. You pull up the app, all your photos are loaded in already. You don't have to wait. It's as if they were on your phone. They might even be faster than if you were on your phone.
Yeah, and I think like, you talked about your example of like VR heart surgery stuff, but like I'm just thinking about VR in general where like you can just like see people in VR with like that Facebook thing that they're doing with the not workspace, but like the thing where
they're like chat, chat service. Yeah, exactly.
Like that would definitely be something that like
being able to render that and
yeah.
stream that in real time. That 5G will enable that, make that a super smooth experience.
And also just like thinking about the way that like you watch TV and like TV shows and all these things, like just like even within the parameters currently, like just like how quickly you'd be able to download like movies off of Netflix now would be completely different.
Yep.
So then the next burning question is, will LGE 4G LTE service become cheaper because of the implementation of 5G?
No,
you want to pay less for things?
No. And look, T-Mobile's promising cheaper service, but truthfully, I don't imagine the prices go down. I imagine you like get more for your money is ultimately how they kind of, it's the Samsung argument, where they justified the Note 9 is like a better value because they give you more. I imagine that's going to be what the argument is for these carriers, because it's hard for me to see them actually cut prices, per se, especially if they're pouring money into investing in these networks. Their argument is that there's more capacity with the spectrum they get, especially if T-Mobile and Sprint combine. It means it's the cost of delivering the service is cheaper, and that they want to pass those savings down to consumers. I imagine you'll just get more in terms of like capacity, in terms of the ability to consume data. Like that's going to all jump, but I don't know if prices are actually going to be cheaper.
Do you think that
I'd be genuinely surprised if the prices went down?
Do you think that with 5G that there's still going to be these issues of like, hey, it's unlimited, but like not really? Like, do you think that expands the parameters?
I think that's the big question.
Yeah.
Is technically, if what they're saying is true, then like these limits should all go away.
Yeah.
Right. Like throttling should go away. The fact that like there's a high definition and a standard definition video option, like it should all be high def. It should all be 4K streaming.
The limit does not exist.
Because there was that issue with those firefighters in California.
Yes, the throttling issue. Absolutely. Verizon says it was a customer error. They blame the customer, but
the firefighters, they blamed the fire.
But yeah, like the issues of throttling should technically go away, at least for a while. Imagine like once they open it up and like the capacity is huge, people will start creating apps and different programs that take advantage of all that bandwidth. Once it starts getting eaten up again, you can see the carriers tighten things up. But I would like to see 5G open the doors to like a truly fully unlimited, no strings type plan again.
And that they'll cancel in like 2 years.
Yeah. But at least you'll get it for a few years.
Yeah, get grandfathered in while you can.
This one just came in from Mike Shaw that caught my attention. It says, I saw a story where a company is making AR glasses that will use 5G to instantly overlay information on the real world, maybe even people's social media stuff over their heads and store hours. This sounds like a little bit of what we saw at the last Google I.O., and more specifically, it sounds a whole lot like Magic Leap.
Magic Leap, Google I/O. I mean, a company called ODG is one that I looked at a few years back. They've got smart glasses running on LTE. I would say it's going to be a little while before we get smart glasses running on 5G. I mean, in terms of the battery consumption, those glasses would have to be super bulky to work. But yeah, the idea is that if you've got a 5G connection, you can overlay data super fast. It's as if it was stored on the glasses themselves, but really running over the network. And so definitely, that's definitely one of the more exciting prospects, making actually smart glasses relevant again.
I'm more curious about who would actually buy into that. Like, I feel like it'd be cool for like the first 20 minutes, and then it's just like, why do I have to wear this all the time?
I don't know if it would necessarily be useful for consumers, but imagine like an auto mechanic wearing these glasses. If they stare at an engine and they can see the diagram.
Yeah, there's been talks about using this within like the U.S. military as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, the U.S. military already uses smart glasses.
Yeah.
So like having a 5G connected one, like having like data relayed to your glasses in real time, that would be huge.
So I'm glad you actually mentioned battery, because that was the next question from Ricky, is how will 5G performance on devices affect battery life on your pre-existing phones? Is it going to help, hurt? What do you think?
Well, it's not going to work on existing phones anyways. If you want 5G, you're going to get you're going to have to use a new phone.
I phrased that wrong. We talked about how the battery is going to be on like giant AR goggles. Let's talk about just a phone.
Oh, phone. Yeah, of course. It's unclear. Everyone, I asked that question to all the handset makers, all the carriers, basically everyone, and they all say they have a plan to account for it. But I do remember when 4G LTE first came out, those first phones were like, they did not last that long. Despite the fact they were bulky, they had large batteries to kind of accommodate the LTE connection. The phones didn't run long, and I imagine it'll be very similar with the first 5G phones.
I think I remember, like, when I had my first smartphone, I purposely set it to only, like, 2G unless I needed it.
3G?
Yeah, unless I needed it. No, like, this was before 4G LTE.
Oh, got it.
So I purposely, like, set it to, like, 2G only unless I needed it.
Although if you have 2G, you have no data then.
Yeah, but like I would rather have no data than like my
have your phone die.
dead. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would basically only turn it up to 3G if I needed to like look for stuff.
I mean, the argument that they've made is, they've obviously learned a lot from 4G. They've got more intelligent systems that allow for like directing battery usage when it's not needed, like shutting off 5G when it's not needed or only turning it on when it is. So we'll see. I mean, I'm a little skeptical that these phones are going to run that long, but again, that's a problem for next year.
Oh,
maybe.
Man. The comment section is killing me right now. Chris Osborne says 5G AR for Tinder would be hilarious. Seeing people's profiles pop up over their heads. And then Priority 1 follows up 5G, starting the suitcase cell phone war all over again. I love our audience.
Yeah, well, like Sprint just announced last week that it will have the first 5G phone in the U.S. They're tapping LG to make it. I asked them about sort of the bulk, and they say like it's going to be a little bit thicker than your normal premium flagship phone, but it's not going to be significantly bigger. So we'll see. We'll see how they work.
Brandon Franco asked, do you think 5G will have a lot of home throttling?
Ooh, great question. Like as a broadband service?
I would think so, yeah.
I would say early on, no. I think they're just it's going to be wild, wild west for the first few years as they experiment with it. And because that home broadband service is using what's known as millimeter wave spectrum, that's super, super high frequency spectrum that's got a lot of capacity, you're not going to hit a limit for a while. So I can imagine these companies are letting people go crazy for a while just to really test the full capabilities of 5G. So yeah, I can't imagine throttling limits, at least early on.
Here's a question coming in from BVG. How long until Ajit Pai screws this up?
Oh, I'm not going to answer that.
Alfred will.
I don't know if we have enough time.
He's like, who's an Ajit Pai?
One more for 5G. Chris Osborne, do you think Apple, Google, Samsung, and all of them will offer LTE versions and 5G versions of their new phones?
Well, I mean, you're going to see LTE versions of phones this year for sure. I mean, next year, not every phone's going to be 5G. There's definitely going to be.
LTE is going to bleed over for a while.
You're definitely going to. And in terms of phones with 5G, there will definitely be an LTE connection. It's not like it's 5G only. Like, no, there's no 5G network that's going to handle it in terms of coverage. So you're going to have that fallback to LTE. But there are going to be plenty of phones that will just be LTE only next year. It's not like next year is the year 5G where everything just switches over. It's going to be gradual.
Though the telecom companies would very much like you to believe that.
Year of 5G.
It's like, I feel like 5G is like a YouTube comment section now where every company is just going to come like, first.
Yes. Verizon shows up, they're like, frist.
Frist.
All right, just a couple minutes left to chat about the probes, the Alpha Centauri probes.
Yeah.
Storm King asks, do these probes have anything to do with President Trump's Space Force? That's a good question.
No.
This is an independent private company.
Private project, so this is not Space Force related.
So when they get out there, what are they looking to send back? Is it just going to be more pictures and information from greater distances that we haven't achieved yet? Or are they actually pursuing something specific, like Mac and me?
I think they're trying to run a scan for life forms, scan for what planets look like, what sort of the atmosphere is like in the Alpha Centauri system. So I think they're looking for whatever they can find, and that's firing back that data.
That's
via
because
laser.
the Alpha Centauri system is literally our measured closest neighbor.
Yes, it's our next door neighbor.
We're going to start there and then
only
maybe
30
move
to 40
beyond.
years away.
Yeah, that's really not that big a deal.
What if the folks in Alpha Centauri had also sent out laser probes,
Laser-powered probes,
and they hit ours at the same time?
Now, what if the probes had 5G and smart driving capabilities and were able to avoid a head-on collision in space?
There's
I have tied these stories completely together. You're welcome.
Alien John Leger is there.
He's also wearing pink sneakers, but he wears 5 of them because they've got 5 feet. So,
well, we all know John Leger is actually an alien, so I don't know what you guys are looking for. But we are out of time. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. The questions and comments keep flooding in. I wish we could go longer. But
yeah, we'll definitely do more 5G shows for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna have
Brian's
to.
Fantastic!
People love 5G. I'm sorry, Brian.
It's just not visually interesting from a video production's point of view.
I know.
Anyways, thanks, everybody, and thanks USB for, as always, sponsoring the show this entire month. And we'll be back tomorrow. Roger, you're up.
Yeah, CNET's available. The podcast is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Feedburner, Google Play Music, and the Amazon Alexa. Of course, you can find our podcast on CNET.com. See y'all tomorrow.
Sleep.
Goodbye.
Oh.